But the idea is to maintain a receptive, alert state of being. And that's not something that people are ordinarily experiencing. Most of the time, people are experiencing a state of mind, not a state of being, a mental state or an emotional state. You know, I'm a psychologist, and the way we determine the well-being of a person is to do a mental status evaluation, right? So we're doing an assessment of the state of their mind. We're doing an assessment of their mental condition and their emotional state. So that's how we determine whether somebody is sane or crazy. That's how we determine whether somebody is well-adjusted or disordered, is if their thinking is disordered, if their emotions are disordered. And so I was watching a documentary last night. It's actually very good. One of the things, if you come to this class on a regular basis, that I do is give you resources, you know, mention books that you can read, mention videos that you can watch, to fill in the blanks, to fill in the understanding. Because one of the things that's necessary to establish a meditation practice is to develop an understanding of why you're doing this, what this is, how this works, why this is critical. It's not a hobby. It's not a curiosity. It is a very serious practice that is intended to produce dramatic results. It's intended to change the way you are. It's intended to change the state of mind that you're in, and it's intended to introduce to you the experience of being, a state of being that's different than a state of mind and an emotional state. And this documentary that I watched last night, it's called Zen, Rinzai Zen, Shodu Harada Roshi. It's a Japanese abbot of a Zen training monastery in Japan, traveled to the west coast of the United States to lead a meditation intensive. And he talks about his life, and he was going to become a psychologist. And he was going to school to become a psychologist. And he felt that this would help him to understand himself, because he didn't like himself. He didn't like his own personality. He didn't like his life. His father was a temple priest. And in Japan, you're supposed to, you know, the sons take up the occupation of the father. So he didn't want to be a temple priest. He was interested in science. He thought science was the answer. And so he started to study psychology and was going to become a psychologist. And one day he was on a bus, and he was going to check out this monastery where they teach meditation. And on the bus, he saw this man sitting there reading a book. And this man captured his attention, because this man seemed so different than everybody else on the bus. He was just so calm, so present, so serene, so tranquil, so able to just stay focused on the book he was reading while everybody was coming and going and moving and shifting, and he was just still reading the book. And so this guy was so taken by the atmosphere that this man generated and the state of being that this man was in, that when this man got off the bus, he followed him. And he followed him, and he followed him to the monastery that he was going to. And this made such an impression on this guy that he gave up his psychology studies and went to be trained by this guy. This guy became his teacher. And one of the things he said about psychology that caught my attention, because it was exactly that way for me, was it occurred to him that psychologists that are trained in psychology are oriented to be a person. They're living the life of a person, the same as the people that come for treatment with them. So they're not in a state of being. They're in what's considered to be a state of health, because their thinking is not disturbed, and because their emotions are not disturbed. So one way to understand this, and the way this occurred to me in my own practice, is that's the blind leading the blind. Because if you're not awake, if you don't even understand what awake means, if you're not experiencing a state of being, or you don't understand what a state of being is, then you're in the same predicament as everybody else. So how can you help them? You can assess their condition in terms of how disturbed their thinking is or how disturbed their emotions are. And you can try and help them make adjustments with that. And there's some degree of success in doing that. But generally speaking, it's a failure, just like everything else. To get somebody to be able to function a little better so they're not in as much trouble as they were before falls far short of what's possible as far as a human life is concerned. Most of us are interested in the same things. We want to be happy, peaceful, satisfied. We want to be able to see things clearly, be able to respond to what is happening in our lives. And so meditation offers this possibility. It offers us a possibility of experiencing what we want more than anything else. And it's not just a question of meditation. It's very important to be clear that I'm not saying meditation is the only way to get into this state of well-being. I'm not saying that meditation is the only way to be happy, satisfied, and peaceful. I'm saying it is a technique that works if you practice it the way it's meant to be done. And without it, the likelihood of your discovering and refining and experiencing this state of well-being, this state of being, without it, without some technique, without some assistance, without some help, without some understanding about it, the probability of your discovering this and experiencing this and living this possible life is very low. Because we're all swimming with the same fish. We're all in the human condition that's being perpetuated all day long, the state of mind that's being perpetuated all day long. And the idea that there is an experience possible, a state of being, the idea that there's an experience possible that would fulfill us in the things that we want more than anything else, that idea is foreign to most people. Because it's foreign to most people because people are conditioned to be interested in what's happening. People are conditioned to be interested in the circumstances or the conditions of their life, and so they give their energy to trying to improve those circumstances or those conditions. One of the things that I find very interesting is, we're sitting here in a health center, a gym, a health center, YMCA. And the intention of this place is well-being. The problem is that if you go and you look around here, you see people doing a lot of things to improve their physical well-being, while if you could hear what's going on in their mind, you would realize that they're crazy. They may be working on their physical well-being to be more physically healthy, but to what end? If you're crazy, if you're a healthy, crazy person, what good is it? And so it never ceases to amaze me that that's missing, that there's very little interest or intention focused on the necessity of being in a state of well-being, even in terms of being able to succeed in doing the exercise and the practice to have the body be in a good physical state. Why? Because in the condition that most people are living their life in, they're not able to act in their own best interest. The evidence is obvious. All you have to do is look around at humanity and see that most people are thought disordered, most people are emotionally disordered. Anxiety and depression is like rampant at this point. The way that people's minds are working in terms of the thought process and the thinking, the thought activity that goes on is becoming very dangerous, right? Look at the news, right? We live in a country that is in a cold war with itself, right? Because of people's thinking, because of people's disturbed thinking, because of people's fear-based thinking, because of people's ignorance. And so if this herd keeps heading in the same direction, it's going to go off the cliff that it's headed for. So meditation becomes a very important technique because it gives you a way out. It gives you a way of going sane. It gives you a way of practicing something that can have this state of well-being show up, that you can start to experience the possibility of being, the possibility of experiencing your true nature, which is not physical, which is not a mental state, which is not an emotional state. All that occurs in the physiology, all that occurs in the mind, and all that occurs in the emotional conditions that we experience is unstable. If you don't believe me, well, you just experienced it. If you were attempting to practice meditation, you just experienced the instability of your own mind. Because here you are, what are you trying to do? You're trying to sit still and not move and be silent and pay attention to the body breathing. This is not a difficult thing. This is like about as the easiest thing that's happening in this building right now. Sitting, paying attention, relaxing the body, and paying attention to the body breathing. Just be aware of the body breathing. But what happens is your attention keeps getting pulled back to the thinking activity, to the mental condition, and when it gets pulled back to the mental condition, you're witnessing the restlessness and the instability of your own mind. You're witnessing the restlessness, the instability of your own mind, and part of that restlessness and instability manifests itself as intolerance, impatience, right? You want to meditate, but you want to experience what meditation has to offer now, not tomorrow, not next year. I want that now. If you tell me that meditation can allow me to experience a state of being in which I am happy, in which I am peaceful, in which I am satisfied, if you tell me that's possible, right, my response to you is when? When? And if I sit here and meditate and what I experience is restlessness, and what I experience is distraction, and what I experience is instability and intolerance and impatience, if that's what I experience, I'm not going to want to do this a lot. I'm not going to want to practice this if that's what I experience. But you see, the thing you have to understand, and the reason you need a teacher for this practice is because that's not meditation. That's the beginning attempt to meditate. The beginning attempt to meditate. And when you begin to attempt to meditate, you're dealing with a mind that has been in control of your life. You're dealing with the thought process that you've identified yourself with that has been in control of your life. You're dealing with an emotional state and a physical state that has been in control of your life. And when you sit to meditate, it may be the first time in your life that you are removing yourself from that activity. Maybe the first time in your life that instead of identifying with your thinking and your emotions and your physical state, that you're watching the body breathing instead of identifying with all that. And when you're watching the body breathing, if you persist and if you're determined to continue to do the practice, while you're watching the body breathing, being starts to become evident. Being starts to become evident. Watching the body breathing and not being involved in the thinking activity allows the idea that there is an awareness of the body breathing to start to have an effect on you, because at some point, especially if you have a teacher and teachings, at some point it occurs to you that this awareness of the body breathing is me. It is my true identity. It is not a personality. It is not a thought process. It is not an emotional state. It is not a physical state. And it's completely stable. It is completely the same all the time. It is that which does not change. And so this is the place that you can find the stability that you can count on. This is the place that you can experience the possibility of happiness, satisfaction, and well-being, because it's always available when you experience the state of being. What is a state of being? It's a state of awareness, and it's a state of awareness that is aware of itself. This is what's possible through meditation, is to wake up and understand that you are the awareness. It is a natural state. And when you wake up and you come to see directly that you are the awareness, it becomes possible to be aware of being aware. Almost nobody in humanity is aware of being aware. They're just aware, and then the awareness attaches itself and identifies itself with the thinking process, the emotional state, and the conditioning that says you are a physical body and you are a separate self. This is the primary condition that humanity is in. So to move away from that briefly and to pay attention to the state of being that is formless, that is timeless, that is always available, and start to feel that state of being, start to experience the fulfillment that it is, the calmness that it is, the satisfaction that it is, the peace that it is, the happiness that it is. And then to discover that this is your true nature. It is not personal, it is not a personality, and it is always available to be experienced, but you have to train yourself to come out of the state of mind that you're living your life in. You have to train yourself to stop being run by your emotions, and you have to train yourself to start to pay attention to this experience of being consistently. If you pay attention to this experience of being consistently, and you're aware that this is my true nature, right, then you will start to experience a more and more consistent state of well-being, a calmer state, a clearer state, a state where you can start to witness what's actually happening instead of what you think about it or how you feel about it, a state in which you can be responsive to life instead of reacting to life, a state in which you can fulfill your highest desires, a state in which you can fulfill your highest interest. What do I mean by that? A state in which you can actually express the love you want to express. A state in which you can actually experience real, true love. Not romantic love, not sexual love, real, true, unconditional love. An affinity with all that exists is what's possible. To experience that your existence is an affinity with all that exists. And the state that's possible at all times is this state of well-being, this state of clarity, this state of calmness, this state of satisfaction. But it's not going to happen by itself. And if you're new at meditation, you've probably just experienced the restlessness, the unstable mind, the unstable emotions. That's not meditation. You've got to begin to do the technique and the practice over time. And if you do that over time, and you have a teaching to study that will give you an understanding of what you're doing, and you have a teacher to work with that can guide you to move you back onto the path when you go astray. If you have those components and you have enough determination, you have to have strong determination. You have to be able to persist. You have to not be affected by your impulsivity. You have to not be affected by your tendency to be irritable and intolerant and impatient. You have to work through all that to get through the beginning process of the practice of meditation. And if you stick with it, and if you are determined, and if you do this consistently day after day without fail, the lights will start to go on. You will start to experience meditation. The experience of meditation is called the natural state. It's an experience of your true nature. And when you start to experience your true nature, you start to wake up and start to come out of the dark, and you start to realize that this true nature offers you the fulfillment of your life. What they have discovered in brain science is that if you practice meditation consistently over time, the structure of the brain changes. the function of the brain changes. And when the structure and the function of the brain changes, the chemical makeup of the brain and the electromagnetic makeup of the brain changes as well. So the organ, which is the organ of the brain, has 100 billion neurons. It's the most sophisticated organism in the universe that we know of. And science is still very early in understanding how this amazing organ works, okay? So in meditation, what we're discovering is that this organ, which is the center of operations for your life, it is the center of operations for your physical body, it's the center of operations for your mental life and your emotional life, right? That this organ can be hacked. This organ can be trained. This organ can be reconditioned to be consistent with the way things really are. What does that mean? One of the things that means is that through the learning and the understanding and the practice, you come to see directly that the truth is that you are not a separate self, that you are not a physical body. This is the way your brain has been conditioned to believe that reality is. And so you live your life consistent with the indoctrination and the conditioning that you were exposed to as a child, right? And you've been conditioned to be part of the tribe. You've been conditioned to be crazy because that's what the condition the tribe is in, is crazy, right? Because people believe that what they believe is true, even if the evidence says that it's not. The evidence is very clear that says that human beings are suffering from their own mental state. You have a voice in your head that's torturing you because it's telling you things that are inconsistent with reality. It's telling you things about yourself that aren't true. It's telling you things about other people that aren't true. It's telling you things about life that isn't true. And it's perpetuating this ongoing misunderstanding about reality in which you believe that happiness is a function of what you have. That's not true, right? But the voice in your head's operating under that understanding that what you want, the happiness you're after, the peace of mind that you're after, the satisfaction that you're after, is available out there in the world. And so you have to get it out there in the world. You have to figure out how to get it. It might, that's why money's so popular, because money can be turned into whatever you want, right? So people figure that making money or being rich is the answer to suffering. Even though the evidence is obvious that it's not the case. If you really pay attention and you look at people that have a lot of money, you will see that they are not happy. They are not peaceful. They are not satisfied. They're crazier than they ever were because now they're paranoid about losing that money, right? So this is something that when you start to wake up, when you start to practice meditation, your eyes start to open. You start to see things as they really are. You start to realize that human beings are crazy and I am crazy too because I am one of those human beings. Yawning is actually a very important way of releasing energy.
Really?
Yes. Yawning is very...
You keep yawning. Theory is part of the practice.
Yeah. Whatever, see, if you understand the practice, and this is why it's so important to understand the practice, if you understand the practice, you realize whatever is happening during the space of the practice time is natural. It's a natural process of coming out of a condition that you're in by moving your attention away from that condition, and then the energy that's blocked in the body, you know, the prana, the chi that's blocked in the body, right? When you're in this relaxed, receptive state and a state of being, that energy naturally wants to get released. And so yawning is considered to be a very powerful way of releasing specific forms of emotional energy. So it's a good thing. See, when you're in the meditation session, trust that everything that's happening is consistent with a process that you don't necessarily understand. But it is consistent with a process, and the process is a process of waking up. It's a process of coming alive. To live in your mind is not an alive life. To live in your mind is a dead life. It's a life that it's a life that is consumed with impressions, right, with mental activity based on conditioning, right? It's a fear-based operation. It's an unstable operation, right? And it affects your emotional experience, right? So it's not alive, it's dead. It's a dead life. It's a thought life, right? It's an in-the-head life. One of the reasons that we talk about practicing breathing in the abdomen area is because breathing in the chest area is consistent with living in your head. You know, the idea of breathing up here is consistent with living in your head. So we want to get the energy to come down to the center, the dantian, right? And start to pay attention to this and live your life from here. You know, start to live from a centered place, not from an off-balance place, which is what the head is. It's an off-balance place. Any other questions? Yeah.
So discomfort while meditating could be an expression like resistance from the personality.
Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah, it's the system that you are rejecting and resisting what you're doing. Because the system that you are is set up in a way to consider anything that brings you away from that system a threat to your existence. Because if you're identified with the system, if you're identified with your mind, which everybody is, if you're identified with your mind, what do I mean by that? If you're identified with that voice in your head that you consider to be you, you know, I can prove to you without any doubt at all that that's not true, that that voice in your head is not you. I can prove to you without any doubt at all that that's the case. And even if you're absolutely convinced that it's true, that that's not you, you'll still fall back into it. Because you have been practicing identifying with that voice 24/7 for years. So just the understanding that it's not true won't stop the mechanical automatic process that keeps running, and you will fall into it. You know, when you leave this room and you go back into the traffic of life, as soon as somebody provokes you, as soon as one of your triggers happen, you go right into being the voice in your head and listening to it describe what's happening, telling you how right you are and how wrong they are, telling you how true it is that you're a victim of circumstances and living your life that way, and advising you that you should have your primary practice in life be fighting and running. That's what the system is telling you. That your primary practice in life should be resisting, struggling, coping, fighting, or running. And what do I mean by running? Prescribed medication, legalized marijuana, all-day football, you know, all the things that people are doing to distract themselves from what? From the experience of who they're being. Distract themselves from the experience. They can go on vacation to the other side of the planet and still be miserable because who they are went with them. And they're just as crazy there as they were here, right? So this is an answer to something, and all I can do is tell you that as a psychologist, what this has provided me is a whole new realm of possibility in terms of how to work with people. And it was the single thing in my own life, because I was just like this Zen master that I mentioned. You know, I thought that if I became a psychologist, I would learn about my own mind. I would learn about human behavior, and so I could use that to become a better person. I could use that to clear up my own craziness, right? Well, that didn't happen through everything that I learned and tried to practice in conventional psychotherapy. But when I discovered Zen, when I discovered meditation, when I discovered these teachings and started to get interested in them and practicing them, then I found something that does work. This actually works. It actually works. It is psychotherapeutic to practice it. And if you practice it the way it's meant to be done consistently, day after day without fail, it will change your brain, it will change your mind, it will change your emotional life, it'll change your behavior. And your life, the quality of your life will begin to expand, and you will start to experience a natural state of well-being.